I was very confused by Arthur Meets Mr. Rogers, and that is because I had no idea who Mr. Rogers was. This is the first episode of the second season of Arthur. It's the first segment in this episode, and I watched it all and got to the end of it and thought I have absolutely no idea what was going on there. And the point of criticism I was going to make is that it doesn't really tell us who Mr. Rogers is. And then I googled it and realised that he's actually a very popular individual, or he was, with children's television or something. I'm still not completely clued up. But I'm then assuming that the American audience would know who Mr. Rogers is. But please tell me if that's not the case. If you are American, or spent your childhood in America, and didn't know who Mr. Rogers was. But if he's somebody who's very, very well known, then clearly this just wasn't aimed at a British audience. Nevertheless, it still was easy to follow once you kind of got the gist of it. I got the gist that he was some kind of entertainer for younger children, because it's all about how Arthur was very excited that Mr. Rogers was going to be staying at his house. Again, never really fathomed out why, but he was initially very excited about this. But then some of the older kids started making fun of him for liking Mr. Rogers, and he decided to withhold that information. And it's all about him trying to not be seen with Mr. Rogers and not wanting to be embarrassed. So I could follow it well enough, but I still felt very confused about who Mr. Rogers was. It's got some important messages in it, though. It's all about... Well, there are two things. The first one is that you shouldn't feel embarrassed about something you like, as long as it's not something really weird. There's no shame in liking something, particularly when it's coming from somebody who is talented, who is putting on a good show. It's fine to like them and appreciate their artwork. And also, your real friends would not make fun of you, because Arthur was worried that his friends would make fun of him for liking Mr. Rogers. And Mr. Rogers was quick to point out that your real friends will not do that. They will not make fun of you. And I loved Buster's role in this. I thought Buster's role was really important. Really thoroughly enjoyed him in this one. And I had a lot of fun with certain aspects of it once I kind of got to grips with what was going on. Would I feel differently if I knew who Mr. Rogers was? Maybe, probably. I don't know. I'd love to know what you think of this episode if you were aware of Mr. Rogers. And I'd love to know what you think of this episode if you weren't. Did you follow it? I always feel like a good episode of anything should never rely on external context. You should be able to follow anything without needing to Google something. But thank goodness for Google. It's obviously therefore not amazing. It's not perfect, because it means you have to know. For example, there was an episode a couple back, I believe it was the episode I'm a Poet, that actually had a real life poet voicing his own character. I had never heard of him, but I was able to understand what his role was within that episode. That wasn't the case with Mr. Rogers, but nevertheless, I followed it well enough. The messages were very clear. So it's not terrible, but it definitely could have been clearer and definitely could have been better.